Hey, Larken Rose here. There's so many crazy, ridiculous conspiracy theories out there. One I just heard of is from somebody who was watching football. And you know how in between plays the offense goes and they do their huddle and they like make a little circle and they're talking to themselves in a way that nobody else can hear. And this crazy conspiracy theorist was claiming that in that huddle, they're secretly planning and saying things with the intention of coming up with a plan and a play that will get them lots of yards and trick the other side. Like they're actually conspiring to do something that serves their interests and goes against the interests of the other team, which is just ridiculous. You really think that's what you think they're conspiring to do that? Obviously, they're just maybe having a cup of tea or discussing casserole recipes. They're not like secretly talking about things that might benefit them and making a plan for what to do next to like try to get points for their team. I'm sure they're just planning in secret things that are going to serve both teams and serve everybody and be in everybody's best interests. Okay, obviously I'm joking, but a whole lot of people believe something that stupid because they either believe that people in power don't have secret behind closed doors meetings where they come up with plans to do things that serve their interests at the expense of everybody else. They either don't think that happens at all, or they don't think anybody in power is bad or has negative motives, and so of course they're not. Everything they're doing is for our benefit. They're just trying to serve us and represent our best interests. If you think that, you're an absolute idiot. And if you don't think they have meetings behind closed doors to plan things that will benefit them, idiot is too gentle a word. You know for yourself, and literally everybody you know, people plan things. They get together and talk to other people. Let's do this in order to accomplish that. Now, the term conspiring and conspiracy is just planning and arrange things ahead of time, but with a negative connotation. It generally means you're planning something not at all nice ahead of time. You know that people plan things. Are you under the impression that bad people don't? Well, there wouldn't be conspiracies. That's crazy. That would be like a football team having a huddle and deciding what to do to try to trick the other team and get lots of yards, maybe even points. That's just silly to think they would do that. Right off the bat, anybody who's like rolling their eyes, no, that's ridiculous, it's some conspiracy theory. If somebody says, maybe government's doing this nasty thing for really bad motives and they're not looking out for us. Oh, you just think, anybody who rolls their eyes just on principle, just basic understanding of humanity makes you a colossal moron if you immediately rule that, people with tons of power, people wielding the violent power of the state over us, well, obviously they're doing that for our benefit. They're violently dominating us and demanding money from us and caging us if we don't pay up and send men with guns after us if we don't obey every single one of their arbitrary BS commands. But they're doing that for our benefit. And I'm sure in secret, they're secretly getting together to find better ways to serve our interests, not their own. How dumb do you have to be to believe that? So, just in principle, just basic humanity and understanding cause and effect and how people interact and plan things and think ahead, you already have to be really dumb to dismiss that as, oh, no, bad people wouldn't, like, plan ahead to do bad things. Yes, they would, and they get caught doing it all the time. But conceptually, you're already an idiot. But what's really, really weird is when the conspiracy has all the way been exposed and proven and is indisputable and right in front of people, and they have the evidence, like they don't even have to like try very hard to go see it for themselves, and they still want to play, they would never do that. They literally wrote it down. So an example I use quite often is Operation Northwoods. They wrote it down, all of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, at the Pentagon, all of them signed off on committing terrorism, including against Americans, to blame it on a foreign country in order to start an unnecessary war based on false flag attacks. They all agreed to that. They described it in detail. They described different ways they could do it. They all signed off on exactly that. You can go see the declassified Operation Northwoods documents. That's how they think. That's how they function. And that's them in their own words proving that. So people who would still, government would never do something like 9/11, they literally described something exactly like 9/11 in the Operation Northwoods thing. Like, we're going to hijack planes and blame it on these people and kill these people. But this is all leading up to, I wanted to mention an awesome new book by James Corbett called Reportage. The hoity-toity pronunciation. Because, unlike me, James Corbett is actually an investigative reporter. Unlike almost everybody, he's actually an investigative reporter. Lots of people in the movement hear things and they pass it on and stuff. He actually digs into it. He actually cites his sources and shows the documentation, and he shows what he can prove. And if he's like saying, well, maybe it's this, he'll say what he knows and what he's sort of extrapolating or guessing at. He is what reporters should be. And I don't know anybody to even compare him to. James Corbett is what reporters should actually be, where he looks for the evidence and he lets the evidence tell him what is true. Instead of, well, I want this to be true. What do I have to concoct and smash together to have an excuse to believe that? But an extra awesome thing about him and about his new book is that he's also entertaining, and he knows how to convey things in a simple enough way. It isn't this big verbose rattling on and on about weird technicalities that nobody knows. He knows how to explain it in ways that normal people can understand. Now, whether they want to accept it or not is another story. But so he's meticulously thorough in the sources that back up, and you'll see that if you get his book. And he's really good at explaining things in a way that's informative and clear and often amusing, that can be a challenge when you're talking about heinously horrible things. He manages to do that too. I don't pretend to be a reporter or an investigator. I don't do that sort of thing. I'm really dang glad other people do. And I'm really dang glad that James Corbett is doing that, because he's kind of the best in the world. Somebody might complain to me and say, what about this guy over there? Like, there are other people good at it, but I literally can't think of anybody I would trust more to A, get the story right, and B, make it so I don't have to trust them, because they give me the sources and I can look it up myself. So I wanted to mention that book of his, because it's a bunch of essays he's written over the years about different topics, but they all sort of go together to paint the big picture. But he gets into a number of things that most pro-freedom people at least kind of know about. But he gets more in depth than most, and he cites 8 gazillion sources for everything. And he gets into a number of things that a bunch of pro-freedom people don't usually know about, and look into the history of the whole eugenics thing, and that creepy elitist mentality of, we know best, so it's okay if we're basically treating everyone else like livestock. And he gets into the whole, family history and, this used to be acceptable. And it's not even, but the thing that makes it so weird is that none of it is in dispute. None of it's debatable. He's not saying, well, some guy told me that his cousin's aunt's housekeeper said that. He's like, here are the documents. You can go look at them yourself. Here's what they say. And so it's so amazing to me how many of these conspiracy theories, they're not theories. They're like on paper, or you can listen to the audio. Like, it's in dispute. Like, nobody's even disputing the accuracy and that the documents and proof is genuine. They just don't talk about it. And the mainstream, or formerly mainstream anyway, just doesn't talk about it. And it's like, oh, we're going to pretend. The Bilderberg meetings, we all know what happened. For pretty long, they said, that's crazy to think all these powerful people are meeting behind closed doors and normal people aren't allowed in. Ha ha ha. And now they're like, oh, of course, tons of powerful people are meeting behind closed doors and normal people aren't allowed to go in. There's nothing to worry about. I mean, they wouldn't be like planning things to empower themselves at your expense, at the expense of your freedom and prosperity. That's silly. Why would you think that? So the fact that even when it's not disputable, and there's all this evidence, and James does an awesome job of it, just collating all the evidence, here you go, as much raw, source material as you could possibly want to show what's actually happening, and then he explains it in a way that's easy to follow and perfectly clear. And I can tell by the way he talks, and I've met him a number of times. I consider him a friend, and wish I had more time to hang out with him, but he's kind of on the other side of the planet. But he seems like a totally cool guy. But I can tell sometimes by the way he talks that he's flabbergasted by how often this stuff is indisputable and right in front of people's faces, and they still either don't know about it or when presented with it go, that can't be true. Like, it's literally like they walked into a room and saw a guy with a smoking gun and a dead guy saying, I just killed him. And they're like, no, you didn't. That can't be true. And it's literally that most people are too scared to consider the possibility that the people in power would do such a thing. Wait, that reminds me. Short pause. I'm back. Here I am with the Jones Plantation novel. Now, this is basically a fictional version of what James gives the real-life, actual, proven versions of. But I wanted to read this anyway because this describes how they function, and it describes why so many people don't want to listen to James Corbett and people like that going, here's the evidence of what's being done to you. It's really bad. This isn't something trivial that doesn't really matter. It's really bad. It's really destructive. It's really damaging to your freedom and prosperity and health and everything else. And why would anybody not listen to that? I'll tell you why. So this is Mr. Johnson reporting to Mr. Smith of the goings-on on Jones Plantation. This is the novel version of the movie. Same story, but you can fit more stuff in a novel than in a movie. There were a few minor confrontations this week between project managers and workers, but nothing serious. Then Smith says, as long as it doesn't get out of control, I don't mind them aiming their anger at the managers. The managers are basically the whippers. The managers serve our purposes as both attack dogs and scapegoats, brutal when we need them to be, and then afterward we feign shock at their conduct and chastise them. And that'll be enough to appease the others? Usually, in extreme cases, we might even have one of our enforcers whipped and then sneak him a few coins and send him back to work. Give any man power over another and his darker nature is sure to come out. What really matters is that workers always come to us to deal with such things rather than taking matters into their own hands. As long as they view us as their advocates, all is well. But how could they fall for that? Johnson wondered aloud. They know the managers work for us. Ready? This is Smith. Understand, they have a desperate need to believe that those who wield power over them care about them and are looking out for their interests. It scares them too much to consider any other possibility. So when our managers get abusive, the slaves out there would much rather blame the enforcers while imagining that we would never condone, much less command, such behavior. And that's what you see. And that's why lots of people literally don't want to know what James Corbett can prove to them, explain very clearly and show all the evidence. And a lot of people don't want to know because it's too scary for them to look at this giant authoritarian monstrosity that they've always been taught. It protects us. It keeps law and order, and it's looking out for us and taking care of us. Big mommy government or big daddy government, that's what keeps us safe. And they really, really, really don't want to look at any evidence that shows that, yeah, Big Mommy and Big Daddy government are insane psychopaths that commit the worst things you can possibly imagine. And then some things you can't possibly imagine. But that is the wall we're up against. And I can occasionally hear the frustration in James's voice, which I totally share. It's like, this isn't debatable. This isn't disputable. Here's the evidence right here showing what they did. History of the Federal Reserve, and a bunch of it can be secret, like the Bilderberg meetings. Some of it's secret, some of it isn't. They used to pretend it didn't happen at all. Now they're like, oh yeah, we totally do that, but don't worry, it's nothing that you need to worry about. And the formerly mainstream media is like, yeah, it does. We don't care. It's nothing important. Just the most powerful people in the world hiding behind closed doors and discussing what to do next. And then, golly gee, all the governments in the world seem to do whatever they decided should be done. Nothing to pay attention to. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, so that's what we're up against. But I love the fact that James is at least making it so accessing evidence isn't the problem. Accessing explanations isn't the problem. If you want to know the truth, there it is. And if you want the proof of it and the documentation of it, there it is. James just hands it to you on a platter. There you go. You can decide whether you dare to look at it. And even in the movement, there's so many people who repeat conspiracies and guesses, and they don't bother to check. It's just, well, I heard this guy say that guy said something about this being government's doing this thing. And there's so much noise out there from people who don't bother, they're just throwing out unsupported assertions and don't bother to actually do the work that James Corbett and others do to actually find out what's true and go to the sources and go, oh yeah, they really did say that. They really did do that. We really do have a record of all this. So all the noise of people believing every conspiracy under the sun, even if there's no basis to, that actually gets in the way of the conspiracies that aren't theories. They aren't debatable. They aren't disputable at all. They're just right there. There's all the evidence. And the fact that James just sticks to that stuff, because there it is. You can look it up. Here's all of the raw sources I'm using. You can go look it up yourself. Like, he just gives the summary and the explanation to make it understandable. But you can go do all the research he did if you want to. And he'll feed you all the evidence to enable you to do that. Anyway, so I really like this book, and it covers a bunch of different topics. It's a number of essays, but they go together very nicely, even though they cover a bunch of apparently unrelated things. Nothing's really unrelated from the overall, basically, plan to enslave humanity. So obviously it's all related. But he keeps it interesting and he keeps it entertaining. And there were a number of things that I learned from that I didn't know from reading his book. And so there will be very few people. There's lots of pro-freedom people who can read his book and go, yeah, this is awesome. But I think there will be very few who could read the whole book and go, oh, I knew all that. Because I didn't. Because a bunch of these sources I never dug into. I didn't know the history of all that stuff. So he does a remarkable job of that. So, yeah, I write about people fictionally doing it. And James just shows, here they are actually doing it. And here's the record they kept of them doing it. So, yeah, I hope you'll check out the book. I hope you'll also share it with other people, because I think he's also a very good sort of diplomat and ambassador for voluntarism in the way he explains it. He's just on Jimmy Dore's show, which was awesome. He did an awesome job, of course, and I think it's great that Jimmy dared to have him on. But he's so good at explaining it to normal people without sounding like a frothing at the mouth loon. Obviously, he knows his stuff and he knows what he's talking about. And he comes across as very knowledgeable, because he actually is. And so this is something I think would be helpful to give to, like, if you know people who are still statists and stuff, who like to read, and at least they know how to think a little bit, and they might actually dare to look at some reality, because he just lays it right out. There it is. There's all the evidence. What are you going to do about it? So yeah, I highly recommend this book. I actually wrote a little blurb for James to use to promote the thing, because I read, he sent me an advanced copy. And I thought it's really dang good. And like I said, I learned a number of things from it. So whether you want the fictional version, if you want that, you can read the Jones Plantation novel or watch the movie, of course. If you haven't seen the movie Jones Plantation yet, what's wrong with you? Go watch it. It's on Amazon and Apple TV and everything else. Or you can get the real life, actual, factual, real version of Mr. Smith. And the parts that at least are on record, because of course they keep a bunch of it secret. But yeah, there's parts of it we absolutely can prove. And James does that better than anybody I know. So there you go. Go read Reportage.